And just working on YouTube right now. Okay, Gloria, go ahead.
All right, let's go ahead and call the meeting to order. We'll start with the recitation of vision statement. Every school will be a thriving school that prepares every student to graduate from high school, college, career, and community ready. Start with our public input. We had one written registration, and it is in regards to the DPI waiver. I strongly urge the board to vote no to the district's request for a DPI waiver of instructional minutes requirements for 3 reasons. First, this waiver adversely affects students with disabilities. The board needs to be aware of how this waiver request is already playing out in practice. Many students with disabilities, including my daughter, cannot access asynchronous learning without direct teacher support and instruction. In essence, these students are being deprived of an education every Wednesday solely because of their disabilities. We have been told by the school's administrators that no teachers are available on Wednesdays to support our daughter. They are not even holding office hours. The special education teacher even told our daughter that she has no school on Wednesdays. The intent of the waivers is to allow districts to substitute regular instructional requirements with evidence-based innovative instructional practices that serve all students and enhance educational equity. But there is no absolutely evidence here that asynchronous learning is an innovative instructional practice that enhances equity. The board should reject outright the district's assertion that they can't comply with instructional minute requirements simply because they want flexibility. The only reason the district cannot teach those minutes on Wednesdays is because they have chosen not to teach on Wednesdays. Of course, teachers need to time for those activities, but those activities should never take the place of actual instructional minutes. Especially for those students who desperately need teacher support every day of the week. PI has made clear that instructional minute waivers, like all waivers, should be rare. Even during COVID-19, instructional minutes have been mandated by law because students need instruction to learn. District does not need a waiver of instructional minutes to the name of flexibility, for minutes of flexibility. Surely our district can figure out how to make time for teachers to engage these other activities. For these reasons, the board should vote no. The district's waiver request instruction means instruction. Synchronous learning with no teacher support available on Wednesdays is not instruction. Thank you. I wanted to read that because it was extensive. It was pretty long, and it's coming from Sarah Larson. I like appearances.
Okay.
Yeah,
we have 5, and the first one is Joe Sensenbrenner. Let him in.
Okay, yep, let him in.
Hello, Joe. Can you let us see your video and turn on your mic, please? We're ready for your public appearance. Thank you. Perfect.
Thank you for this opportunity. My name is Joe Sensenbrenner. I live at 818 Prospect Place, and I've been involved in civic matters in Madison for over 40 years. I am registered and wish to speak tonight on behalf of item 7.2, which relates to the acquisition of land and improvements and the initiation of a relationship related to Badger Rock Elementary School. I have been involved in matters in this part of the community for many years, and for the past 10 years have been president of the board of Rooted, which has forwarded a number of very specific projects. My wife, Mary Ellen, and I have supported the Badger Rock Middle School, the Badger Rock Neighborhood Center, and Rooted's activities on that site. I wholeheartedly support the intent and the specific elements of the materials, which will provide, finally, I think, much better and equal services for an underserved part of our community. The development of these materials has been collaborative, and I again want to salute the staff of the Madison Metropolitan School District for their flexibility and their many contributions. I urge approval of this item on the agenda, and I urge all citizens to vote in favor of the referendum in November. Again, thank you for this opportunity.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Sensenbrenner. The next speaker is Marcia Clayton Campbell.
Marcia.
Marcia, can you unmute your mic, please, and you can begin. Thank you.
Hello.
Hi.
Hi, my name is Marcia Clayton Campbell, and I am the Executive Director of Rooted, the organization that owns the building at 501 East Badger Road. And I'm speaking tonight in support of agenda item 7.2, which is the building purchase. I think we've worked very hard over the last 8 years to create a neighborhood center and support Badger Rock Middle School and support neighborhood families and children. And we think we have heard from neighborhood center participants over the years that we've been operating the neighborhood center that they wish they had an elementary school in the neighborhood. So the elementary school proposal for the South Rim Rock Road area is a wonderful thing. And the property at 501 East Badger Road is a really strong location for something like that because of the existing uses on site. And so I just wanted to appear before the board and to say that that we are wholeheartely in favor of the proposed purchase, and really have enjoyed working with district staff to reach this point. And we look forward, of course, contingent upon the referenda passing, we look forward to a really strong collaborative relationship and to continued strengthening of the neighborhood center as a part of that, and support for additional support for families and children in the neighborhood. So that's what I have for you this evening. And thank you very much for the opportunity to speak.
Thank you, Marcia. Have a good evening.
Thank you. You too.
Thank you. Our third speaker is Claude Gilmore. Oh, Claude, yes, there you go. Thank you.
Hey, Claude.
Hi, how you doing?
Great.
Well, thank you for this opportunity. As many of you might know me, I'm Claude Gilmore, I'm retired executive and community leader, and I'm here representing Operation Fresh Start's Board of Directors to make a request. We want to first thank the Madison School Board for its support of Operation Fresh Start, especially during this pandemic and these challenging times we've been facing. We appreciate that. We also value the partnership and the assistance you have provided to us as part of the legacy program. If you might not know, but in Madison's school district budget in 2021 budget, Operation Fresh Start endured a $75,000 budget cut. And the board made a decision to absorb that cut this year because this is our 50th anniversary. It's great to celebrate 50 years. And we decided to use the money we're going to raise as part of that campaign to offset the cut to this program this year. But that would be a one-time solution. What I'm asking the board to consider, and I think it's important because the youth we serve is about 70, and a large number of them are youth of color. And we're asking the board to maybe consider returning the funding to the previous levels over this next year so that we can continue providing opportunity for these young people to be able to get their high school diploma. That's a big part of what we do, is serving at the kids at risk and making sure that they finish school and get an actual tangible job with very good skills. So that's my request. Mr. Greg Markle, the executive director, is in the queue as well if you have specific questions about the legacy program. I've been a member of the board now for almost 4 years, and I really believe in what the mission of Operation Fresh Start is, which is really helps those on the margin who don't come through the traditional system, but gives them a chance to get skills in construction, conservation, lots of other things that they can then get an actual job with decent compensations to be able to complete their beginning in their life on this journey.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Gilmore.
Thank you.
Okay, our fourth speaker is Larry Winkler. Larry, please go ahead and share your video and unmute your mic and you can begin.
Hello, let's see if I'm here. I'm here, good. Thanks for offering this public opportunity here. I'm here to ask the board to make this. I have unmuted myself.
Mhm. You're good
You hear me
now. Yes.
Okay.
Mr.
Go ahead.
Winkler, you
Go
might
ahead.
want to stop your YouTube.
Yeah, I did.
Very good. Thank you so
I'm
much.
asking the board to, if it hasn't already, is to make the schools available for the election November 3rd. I've spoken with Mary Beth on a couple of occasions, certainly prior to the August 11 primary, and it was touch and go trying to find places as polling locations. It's a very difficult time at that point. A lot of negotiations occurred, and there was a lot of concern that the places they found were going to pull out at the last minute. Now, I think if we can make the schools available in this downtime and pandemic time for voting, I think it would be very appreciated. I did talk to Mary Beth on September 8th while we were preparing the absentee ballots, initializing the absentee ballots, and I asked her whether she would appreciate me coming to the board and asking them, because the difficulties in trying to, there seems to be substantial difficulties in finding polling locations this year. So that's what I'm asking the board to do, and make the schools available as needed by the city clerk's office, so that at least that complication for this election can be simplified, because there's plenty of other things that they need to do. Any questions?
Thank you, Larry.
What do you think?
Yeah, in open comment, we can't like have a conversation, but so appreciate your thought in coming in and speaking to the board.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, Larry. I know it's such a complicated system. It's weird.
Mr. Winkler, we can have staff respond to you too. So I've written down your comment, and we'll have somebody from staff respond to you. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
Bye.
you. Have a good night.
Thanks.
Okay, last speaker is Gregory Markle.
Hi, Greg.
Hi,
Thanks for joining us.
thank you. Thank you for the opportunity. My name is Greg Markle. I'm Executive Director of Operation Fresh Start. And thank you for the long-time partnership between the school district and Operation Fresh Start as we work together to provide young people a chance for success. And thank you especially to you, Chair Gloria, and Dr. Jenkins for being part of the kicking off of our 50th anniversary celebration last Friday. And thank you for the gift which you made at that time also, Dr. Jenkins. We really appreciate your support. Here to speak today about the sort of formal arrangement and the money within our arrangement. On July 27th, school district staff and interim superintendent Belmore came to us speaking of the dire budget situation which the school district felt that it was going to be in at that time. And they proposed a 42% reduction in programming and funding for Operation Fresh Start. Our board went back and looked at this, and we were able to take some funds which we anticipate raising through our 50th anniversary celebration, and you can give to support that. Basically take some funds which were designated towards increasing driver's license availability for young people in the community and reposition it to keep the program whole. So with that $75,000 funds for 1 year, we came to an agreement with the school district that there would be no cut in the young people being served, which is extremely important, especially this year, as we are providing largely in person, although still some virtual programming for young people who are most likely to not engage well in a virtual setting. So we provide that alternative for those young people to achieve a high school diploma, and through our partnership with MMSD up to age 24, which is another important aspect of the partnership. So the funding situation has gotten better, but we have an agreement. And I think this tells me not to make an agreement quite so early in the MMSD's budget process. But what the board requested is in making this agreement that the school district endeavors to return us back to whole funding or back to the previous year's funding at $276,000 for the next school year. So we respectfully ask that an amendment be made to the motion and or the contract, which simply says that the school district will try to find the funding to put it together so that we can return back to the previous level. We ask for no guarantees. We don't have an absolute that this will happen. I know that there's a large referendum coming up, which will probably affect this greatly. But we do ask that the school district recognize our efforts as an organization and put in writing what I believe the school district is looking to do anyways, which is to endeavor to bring that funding back to the previous level. So thank you again for the time and all the support of school board members and the partnership.
Thank you, Greg.
Thank you.
Good evening.
That ends public appearances. Thank you.
All right. Okay, move that the Board of Education approve the minutes from the regular meeting public input session dated June 29th, 2020. I get a
Second by
second?
Nikki Vandermeer.
Thank you, Nikki. Any discussion? Okay, all those in favor, aye, with show of hands. Any opposed? Okay, motion passes 7-0. Okay, we got another meeting minutes to approve. I move that the Board of Education approve the minutes from the regular BOE meeting dated June 29th, 2020. Can I get a second?
A second,
Second.
Ananda. So, sorry, Nikki, go ahead.
No, don't worry. No, go ahead, Ananda.
Ananda second. Julia, your advisory vote?
Aye.
Okay, all those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Motion passes 7-0.
Thank you.
Sorry, I'm having like screen issues here, so that's why I'm going so slow. Next is Board President announcements. We have a few of them here. A couple. Foundation raises funds for school supply kits. As we prepare to start the 2020-21 school year, an urgent need for individual sets of school supplies had emerged. In response to this urgent need, the Foundation for Madison Public Schools had partnered with MMSD and the community to purchase, package, and distribute up to 5,000 individual supply kits. The board recognizes and greatly appreciates the Foundation of Madison Public Schools, our MMSD partnerships department, and all others who have helped contribute and distribute the supply kits, making our district a more equitable place for students and families. MMSD gives all students free meals. Beginning on the first day of school, all MMSD students have been able to receive free meals delivered to 40 sites across Madison, thanks to our MMSD food and nutrition department and community partners. The pre-prepared meals have been available by curbside pickup once a week, and all students are eligible to receive the meals free of charge, regardless of free, reduced, or paid status eligibility. The board recognizes all the essential work that our MMSD food and nutrition department has done to make this new program a success, and all community organizations and partners who participate in seating our students fed and healthy. Superintendent's announcement and report. I pass it on to Dr. Jenkins.
Okay, thank you so much, Chair Reyes. And at this particular time, I am so pleased to present the 2019-20 annual report. And just before I pass it off to my colleagues, let me say I am so proud of MMSD and our entire family for what we did during last spring, as we learned so much. Last spring, we were in a crisis, and it hit all of us with COVID-19, and we did everything that we could in the midst of this particular crisis to focus not only just on the whole child, but the whole family. We went out and served over 270,000 meals in our communities. We realized that a number of our family didn't have the devices, and we went out and took 9,800 devices out in our communities. And we continued to focus on those who were most challenged by taking out 1,800 hotspots. And as you can see here too, we've had a number of people to continue to follow us as we wanted to focus on our strategic framework goals of making sure that our students, the reality of our students trying to move forward in the midst of a pandemic. But we know that that was really challenging, but we still listened to all of our students and to our families, and we have adjusted what we were doing with last spring in terms of virtual learning coming over the summer, making sure that we have high quality virtual learning for our students right now. The annual report will be presented in just a moment, but I wanted to give an opportunity for Ms. Kistad also to give a few words, as she's worked diligently with our staff to ensure that our students and our staff are in the best position right now, along with our families.
Thank you, Dr. Jenkins. Hello, board members, and it is a real honor and opportunity to be here tonight with all of you to discuss and take a look at our annual report. I will echo what Dr. Jenkins has said, that this report really represents the whole child, and it also represents the talented staff that we have working with our children and have been there for our children since we closed last March, as they are today. More than anything, this report represents a new baseline for us as we join hands and truly partner together to accelerate learning, whether we are in a virtual environment or a face-to-face environment, under the visionary leadership of our new superintendent, Dr. Jenkins. So I look forward to having this discussion with you tonight. I would urge you to ask us questions and to really probe about what you're seeing. And as always, my team, along with the chiefs, are here to support and answer questions along the way. Andrew, I'll turn it over to you.
Andrew, you're muted. Thank you.
Appreciate it. So I'm going to do a screen share to walk us through a handful of slides. After this, we also have Dr. McGregory joining us with an appendix, some additional data displays, kind of a prototype of sorts we would like the board's reaction to. But as Dr. Jenkins had pointed out, we had a very unconventional school year. So we have a very unconventional annual report for us this evening. I'll get into a presentation mode here. So this annual report represents a couple of different administrations, of course. We have Dr. Jenkins joining us to lead us through this school year, very well informed by an annual report and all of the things that we learned during the 1920 school year. And then, of course, Dr. Belmore at the helm of the district for the first 2/3 under kind of conventional education routines, and then during virtual instruction. So we had the opportunity to learn a lot from this, and just sharing it with you and the community this evening as part of this annual report. So a very trying time, of course, but a good quote here from Jane is that it's never been clearer that even in dark times, our MMSD family still shines bright. Looking at the reality of all of these actions, the message that you get is that the community came together. As Dr. Jenkins highlighted a couple of things on here, the meals served, the devices we've delivered, the hotspots that we've made available, those kinds of examples could not be done just by MMSD, but as part of a community. And it's delightful to have seen the community come around us. We do know that making this move very suddenly, that there were going to be some imperfections, and we are here to present some of these stories and some of these imperfections, as well as the strengths for the district moving forward. And it's important to know that behind each of these numbers, the 270,000 or more meals served, the almost 10,000 devices, that all of these are terrific numbers on their own that illustrate what's going on, but each of them is also a story behind them. This is just a summary as we're running through some of these results. There is a standalone report out on the district's website, and we also have additional resources, additional numbers available in a Tableau, and then as Dr. McGregory is going to go through, even some prepackaged data that could be available too. So I encourage you to go out and look at all of the videos, the stories, the photos behind all of this in a very interactive way on our website. So again, looking at a very abrupt closure, we did have to shift to virtual learning and had to do this in a way that no district has ever been required to do before. Really have to say that we rose to the challenge, and educators will certainly find a way. Our families and students also rose to the challenge, and it was important for us to learn about their experiences during this unique opportunity to really get fall right. We knew that some element of virtual learning is going to be around for a while, so we wanted to know what people are experiencing and be able to build on that. And what we had then is a survey that was in the field where we had some very good participation, and this went to families, students grade 3 and up, and to our teaching staff. Just a few highlights here. If you want more, there's a full report. The board has already seen that in presentation during work group. Just a few highlights then. 62,000 families responded. Bar chart on here describing the degree that families felt supported. 23% very supported and 39% very supported by their schools. A very good quote here. We always want to illustrate some of the stories behind our numbers, and this one coming from families, what is stressing it's just as important to teach the families and parents how to use these systems as it is the kids, to help those kids navigate those systems. And 62% of families indicated that they did feel supported during that learning experience. Almost 6,000 students, 5,800 students. We asked how often they communicated with their teachers. A few times a week, 58% of them, 20% heard from their teachers once per week, once per day, multiple times a day. Good quote here, really preferring actual in-person teaching to have a better understanding of what's going on. So a clear signal that it may be working but needs to work better. 82% of students then indicating that they really know what to do in their classes. So again, trying to convey that guidance to students. We're making some good marks, but certainly some work to do. 1,300 teachers had responded then. 11% and 34% strongly or somewhat agreed that they were able to provide rigorous, challenging instruction during virtual learning. And then a stressor here is a pull quote to say, you know, we really do need to get this right to make sure that students know what they're doing. We're holding folks accountable. And 37%, you know, kind of a obvious area for improvement is really how to deliver more rigor and more robust experiences for students in a virtual environment. So we asked all of those questions of our students, our families, and our staff members, and we listened. And what we did is we took those results, both open-ended comments and our quantitative evidence, and really identified three major themes, major drivers, where if we get this right, the virtual learning experience will be that much stronger for 2021. And the first then is making that frequent and meaningful connection. The second area, the second driver then we discovered was creating robust learning experiences, that rigorous experience. And then the third, strengthening MMSD guidance. Each of these then is informing actions, and we have a whole host of plans that have been formed by these evidence. And for example, tying the frequent and meaningful connections over to virtual office hours and more frequent synchronous learning opportunities. Your robust learning experiences, the desire for that, then also driving more synchronous opportunities, a comprehensive assessment plan that sorts out all of our new options for this year, and then revising our grading and attendance policies. Strengthening MMSD guidance, that was also part of the exploration and development of revised grading and attendance policies. Our new vision for professional learning for the district was informed by this, as well as a new instructional continuity plan to make sure that folks know exactly what's going to happen when we move in or out of a virtual environment. For our goals, we have, as you know, our strategic framework, and that is built around the goal statement that we say at the beginning of every board meeting and do live by, which is preparing every student for college, career, and community upon graduation. And each of these then plays out in three different areas. The first is very much our academic progress for those, making sure that students are on track to graduate with college, career, and community preparedness. Thriving schools, thriving students, families, staff is the second. And then the third is ensuring that all of our African-American students excel in school. Now, we've had, I believe we're 6 years into strategic framework, so many of these metrics are very, very familiar to us. However, given our circumstances from last year, we have to present what we can. And in some cases, that is really relying on semester one results. So it's not the fullest picture that we have for these conventional framework metrics, but of course, much of our time was spent in the virtual environment. So we do have that then as evidence. Goal one then is largely our academic goals. Again, no MAP, no Aspire last year. The state did not administer forward. So what we were able to present here is some ACT results These are a little bit different from previous years. They do not include Aspire results, and they do not include retakes. But 48% college ready for ACT, that's going up 4 percentage points over 5 years, slight increase for African American students. ACT for math, 43%, up 2% overall, but then down 2% for our African American students. 84% four-year completion rate. So completion rate includes both high school diplomas and equivalents. And it is lagging 1 year. So we could report on that one. And some good news here with a 5 percentage point increase overall and an 8 percentage point increase for African American students. And immediate enrollment in a 2-year or 4-year institution following completion of an MMSD high school. Those post-secondary enrollments, 72%, pretty flat from last year. And I'd actually highlight that that's 17, 18. So pretty flat from 1 year to the next, and 1 percentage point down for African American students. 54% cumulative GPA of 3.0 or better. And again, this is one where we relied on semester 1 because of changes in grading practice. Goal 2 then around our thriving environments. Our teachers of color, 13% currently. However, we do have 1 year lag on that, and the board should see a result, a refresh report on that this fall. 78% staff retention was a brand new metric tracked in a consistent way that you see here. And then 77% with attendance rate of 90% or better. And again, that's a semester 1 number. Goal 3 is built around our African American students excelling in school. And we've got a slight gain for 29% of our students as advanced learners, only 1 percentage point, and that's the K-8 measure. For our high school students and advanced courses, then a special look at that, 38%. It says up 12% here, but I'll stress that these are, all 3 of these numbers are semester 1 numbers. If you do look at semester 2, that is currently 37%, so it's about the same, and that's up 2 percentage points over the last 5 years. And then a semester 1 grade 9 on track number, 66%, holding from the previous year. At this point, Dr. Jenkins, am I handing this over to you for comments, or Kelly?
Hi, I'm happy to take over. So while we did a tremendous job following the COVID-19 announcement, moving to virtual learning, our 1920 school year also included a significant year of preparation and work with the community to get ready for the November 2020 Future Ready referendum. In tandem with our community and over 50 information sessions and just about 4,500 community responses. Together, we were able to build a referendum package that includes 2 operating questions for the November ballot. And if you would give me the next slide, Andrew. Those include an academic side of the operating referendum that this board has invested, is looking at to invest into the future, an early literacy, including a full day 4K pilot, daily world language, programming in arts, music, science, of course, attracting and retaining high quality teachers, and continuing to invest in our strategic equity projects that have proven academic results for kids. And on the next slide, Andrew, what we'll see is on the facility side, 3 main areas that we're looking to invest in, including renovating all 4 of our comprehensive high schools, moving Capitol High, an alternative program in 2 separate locations into a school building we own at Hoyt School, and looking forward to the potential to build a new elementary school on the south side in the Rimrock Road area. All of these projects founded in reducing our carbon footprint with specific funding tied to environmentally friendly projects. So this is a tremendous amount of work that occurred over the 1920 school year to get ready for the 2021 school year. Wanted to highlight that through our annual report and as we move into the 2021 school year. So that's kind of think what I have to say on these slides. If Dr. Jenkins or anyone wants to jump in before we wrap up.
No, that was great. Thank you so much, Kelly. And then Dr. McGregor was going to give the appendix piece this time.
I'll just change over for presentation. Dr. McGregory, I'll drive slides for you this evening.
Thank you. Thank you, Andrew, and thank you, board members and Superintendent Jenkins for allowing us to discuss this part. We were doing a lot of discussion about the annual report and looking at some of the different needs that we have as a district, and also kind of thinking about already next year's report. You know, when you think of some of the work of Covey from a long time ago, talked about begin with the ending in mind. And so we're envisioning about what our future annual reports could look like. As we go to the next slide, we thought about some of the questions that we're getting from folks in terms of wanting more data or some not wanting more data. And we thought about some of the key intersections. And so we wanted to look at some of the math reading results as we think about early literacy, and then really chop the data up a little bit differently so you can kind of see what kinds of things we would like to explore going forward. On the next slide, it shows that we're talking about elementary math results, and we asked some questions like, how might the board react to a different treatment of the data? What additional comparisons might we like to see as a board and a community? What types of what we call nested filters would be most helpful? And gauging interest from district leaders as well as board members about using this approach as we dig deeper into the data when we do different types of board and other retreats. If we go to the next slide, we start off just by looking at all of our students in terms of their reading proficiency in that period. And we did it as a line graph as well as a chart in the next slide. And you see that we disaggregate the data by race. And so you can see that longitudinal trend as well as the progression of each separate racial and ethnic group. We go to the next slide. And you see this represented also in chart format. Some people like graphical, some people like numerical charts. And so we do both. That way everyone can get it the way that they remember it the best. We continue. And we see that as we start to look at this slide on female students, and then we go to the next slide on male students, that consistent with national data, you know, there is a achievement differential between male and female students. We continue to the next slide, and we look at special education students across race and ethnicity. One thing that you'll typically notice is that there continues to be a difference between students who qualify for special education and achievement of non-special education students. But you also see that the differences in achievement between racial and ethnic groups typically are more narrow in special education than students who do not qualify for special education, as we go to the next slide. As we move forward to the next slide, we see our data on our advanced learners. And what this slide always gives me an indication of is how are we doing in the gap that often people do not talk about when we talk about the difference between excellence and non-excellence. Because our most advanced learners typically are the highest performing students, and we look to see there are members of this population who are not meeting the proficiency bar. And so when we see our top performing students in the district, which are white students who qualify as advanced learners, when we see that 1/10 of them are not qualifying, that gives us an idea of some of the work we need to do overall to bridge that gap between excellence and non-excellence. As we continue on, we also want, when we look at the non-advanced students, we also want to take this into consideration to see what is the gap between the students we consider advanced learners and the students that we do not consider, as we strive to accelerate the learning of all students to make sure that all students are really performing at the highest levels. We continue on. We look at the English language learner data, and we see some of our typical trends. One thing that I noticed when looking at the English language learner students compared to the non-English language learner students, when we disaggregate the data, that several of our racial and ethnic groups actually have the English language learners perform better on the math reading results than the students who are not qualified as English language learners, which is also an indication of some work we need to do in terms of strategic alignment. We continue on. And one of the pieces that we always look at when we look at data is what is the difference in the performance between students who have more family resources typically than others. And so we look at how our students who qualify for low income, which is typically proxied by able to qualify for free and reduced lunch. We look at these students compared to the students who do not qualify in that area, and we see that there's a difference between non-low income students and low income students. But if you go back to the low income students, one area that you see concern is that the top performing group that is low income, as we go back to the slide for the non-low income, is performing pretty equivalent to the bottom group, which is not low income. And so you have the white students who qualify for free and reduced lunch performing on par essentially at the last data point with the Black students who did not qualify for free and reduced lunch, which is also another indication that we have some strategic alignment work to do in this area. As we continue on, some of our overall questions and discussions we have is looking at what might be your reaction to this additional way we're treating the data in this appendix. What kinds of additional comparisons might we need to see as we also think about comparing this to our state level results on the forward exam or even national results on the NAEP. Sometimes people want to even go more granular, so that means putting in more nested filters. So you may look at racial ethnic identity by gender, or race ethnic by gender and by IEP status. And generally this is a way that we get into what we consider to be deeper discussions. However, we like to gauge the different audiences and see how deep they want to go into discussion as we really look to see where our students are really doing and how we might target our efforts for improvement as a district.
Thank you, Dr. McGregory. One of the things I want the board to hear with this annual report, first of all, where we are, kind of where we've been, and then also want to set you up for where we're going. The reality of it is that we did this presentation and we weaved in our referendum in terms of what are our aspirations. We're at a very crucial point, because if you notice throughout the data, there's a trend of a particular group of students that's being left behind. Historically, our Black and Brown students, our ELL students, our special needs students, our poor students have not fared well in our educational system. Now, this is just giving you an indication of what has happened, but we also move to the types of questions, the types of data points, based on our early discussions with many individuals of what we need to do to disrupt where we're going. We're so looking forward to this referendum to put us in a better position, not only with our facilities, but from the operational sides. There's a lot of work going on right now and it has gone on in terms of looking at the whole child. When we come here at the end of next year, in the middle of COVID-19, we want to see how have we moved the needle with our children socio-emotionally, with their mental health, but also academically. And this is having listened to the people in our community. We realize the world right now is still in a pandemic, two pandemics, the COVID-19, when that pandemic, along with the racial inequalities that's continued to persist. We're continuing to state that we're an anti-racist district, right? We are all about pushing anti-racist practices. The measure of that should show up in our annual reports. We can no longer continue to give you an annual report that shows that our children, regardless of their income level, certain groups of students are performing lower than other groups of students. We can't allow our advanced learners to be at 90%. That's unacceptable. If they're advanced learners across the nation, we're seeing that they're regressing instead of increasing. So what are we going to do to be disruptive? So we wanted to give you this annual report. We're here to take questions from you right now, but I hope you got a gist of not only where we've been, where we are, but definitely where we are going. And we're going to be very serious about this work. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Dr. Jenkins. Let's open it up for questions, comments. We'll start with Nikki. You're on mute, Nikki.
One, I really appreciate the data being broken down in multiple ways. I have a hard time reading graphs, so the numerical was really, really helpful. So thank you very much, whosever idea that was. I'm eternally grateful, because otherwise I'm squinting at which line is what. But two, I agree. I want our Black, brown, and all of our students to succeed, and students with disabilities. But we all need to show progress, and I would like to do a deeper dive of the data in the next board retreat. I think that it's necessary if we're going to create a fair playing ground for every student. That means ever, and I agree with that, and I'm very much for that.
Great, thank you, Nikki. Anybody else? Questions, comments? Ananda, was that your hand? Oh.
It wasn't, but it can be.
Okay.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Dr. Jenkins. Thank you, Andrew, Callie, and thank you so much, Dr. McGregory. This is the first presentation that I see you doing. It's a good insight to your brain and how you're thinking. I really appreciate the prompt questions too. So the one thing I will point it out, and that the data reflected on the slides that you shared are similar in your point in regards to where white students that qualify for free reduced lunch compared to where Black students that do not qualify for free reduced lunch. We noticed that throughout the state of Wisconsin, right? And our narrative in the state, and maybe in Madison to a certain degree, is the imperative around racial justice, racial equity. The other point I wanted to make was in regards to how complicated it is, some of the way in which we relate to certain groups. For example, Asian Americans. We know that when we disaggregate that group, we look at Cambodians, we look at Hmong, we look at Khmer students, we look at students, Nepalese, we look at students that are experienced very different than other their Asian groups. So to me, if we're gonna have a conversation about data, that is a data that we have seen sometimes and sometimes we haven't. I know we have found ways to disaggregate some of the data. The other piece that was interesting to me, and I had this conversation with Andrew when I first came on board, was the proximity of Latinx students and Black students. And I find that proximity to be even more interesting when we're looking at color of skin, right? And so, my daughter has a lot of friends that are Latinx from different parts of South and Central America, but some of them are Black. They look Black. So, they are in the US, they're not treated as Latinx. They're not treated as Cuban Americans or Brazilians or, Mexican Americans. They're treated as Black students. And therefore, the sort of the way in which the district treat them it's very similar, and we see very similarities. So one of the things that I hear a lot, and it's work that we've been doing with our community, is to talk more expensively when we talk about Black Lives Matter or Black excellence. I'm sorry. Black excellence, and to be a term that's inclusive of brown students, right? And I feel like, but we're still treating those groups as very separate. So I'm just really curious about how we can even be sharper in a way in which we talk about the groups, in particular when we talk about skin color, that could, enhance our collective narrative around Black excellence. When we're talking about Black excellence, we're not talking about an exclusion of a group, right? We're talking about inclusion of all students. And then the last thing I'll say is that because I'm so immersed in so much data and people want to talk about data all the time because I work at DPI, I actually don't like to talk about data. I'm much more interested in talking about the human part of the data, the stories. And most important for the state of Wisconsin and for Madison in particular, how are we going to use our data to achieve the vision that all students should feel like they belong? And how are we going to say to our students with IEPs that, what the narrative that they are, they can't succeed or they're not going to progress does not need to be true. It doesn't need to be true for them, that we can shift that narrative. And the same for our English learners. So I'm much more connected to a heart and human approach to the data, and how do we illustrate that in a way that is more humane.
Well, I'll go ahead and start, and then Dr. McGregor or Lisa, if you want to jump in. But one of the first things that we have to do, the data is the data. And you saw that it continued to point at a particular group and groups of students who are at the bottom. But the way we level the playing field, you've been hearing me talking about the science of reading. Students learning to read, it can level the playing field across all of this data. And if you look at the data points that's there for reading, we're not exceptional in any one of those particular groups, even when we point out the advanced learners. You can't have 1/10 of your advanced learners not necessarily meeting that level. So when we start talking about how we're going to go in and focus hard in early literacy and beyond, that's going to be one of our strategies that we're going to take on. That's an equity strategy. We started talking about how teachers need professional development around the science of learning, so around the science of reading. This is one of our strategies we're taking. We could all talk all day long about race. We can talk about poverty. I know for a fact, children of poverty are gifted, okay? African-American children are gifted. Latinx children are gifted, just as white children are gifted. And we shouldn't be comparing students based on races. We should be comparing them based upon having an exceptional opportunity to learn. And when you get those exceptional environments for learning and teaching, then that begins to draw down or take us away from those racial conversations. Race is here now, it's gonna be here, but once we start getting all our students special ed of poverty, Black and brown, achieving at those levels, then that changes the narrative of the conversation in which you were just mentioning there. Lisa or Dr. McGregor?
Yeah, I would just add that when I look at data, I like to dance with the data. So and I really do that. I mean, I turn music on and I'm looking at the data. I'm looking at pictures of students too, because I'm trying to envision what it would be like if we change the trajectory. What would it take? What are we missing as we're looking at this these students' story that the data is telling us, or qualitative information telling us, anecdotes about what's going on in the classroom, classroom observations. So all of those to me are data points, and I like to dance with it because it starts to tell a story. And if if you can start to really conceptualize a narrative, then you think even clearer about ways you can disrupt the narrative. And so that's why, I really, when I talk about dancing with the data, I really talk about thinking of the data in a multifaceted way, incorporating all kinds of different data points into the analysis and into the visioning of where our students, they have unlimited potential.
Yeah, I really, Dr. McGregor, thank you for that data. I think that it reminds us, right, when we see our annual report, right, we are constantly reminded about, Black Minds Matter and Black excellence. And you're right. I mean, I think the data really tells us, right, and really guides us on where we need to focus our efforts around particularly our budget decisions as a board, right? And I think it has to align with our strategic objectives. And the data tells us that if the board is not reminded, right, on a regular and shown that those data metrics, we miss out. And I think our community misses out. And so I really do enjoy having that as part of the plan in the appendix. So thank you for that. Any other Ali? And then Chris Crucy.
Yeah, I saw Savian as well. I just wanted to thank our educators. I think so much of what we just saw is the tremendous work of our staff in making sure our students stayed engaged through an incredibly difficult end to second semester. And so I am overwhelmingly impressed with folks' ability to continue to do this work and rise to the occasion of this pandemic. I'm also incredibly proud of our young people who, stuck with us and carried, and continued to carry on academically under circumstances that I think would be hard for many of us as adults to navigate, let alone for our young people. I also want to thank you all for speaking to the areas of improvement in terms of virtual learning and how we used information very rapidly to inform adjustments moving forward. So thank you all for all of that work, and thank you for continuing to center our most vulnerable, our most marginalized young people and advocate for change. I think it's one thing to look at this data in comparison to our data from last year. But if you look at this data in comparison to our data from 10 years ago, we have really shifted the trajectory of this district. And when I say we, I mean our community and our educators and our leadership have been very intentional in making sure more and more of our kids have access to success within our schools. So thank you all very much for your presentation this evening.
Great. Thank you, Ali. Chris Crucy and then Savian.
Thank you, Gloria. I have 4 things, so I'll just kind of go through them and maybe, I don't know if you'll want to respond to them one at a time or... First of all, thanks again to everybody who put together this annual report. It was a really different annual report, and I can imagine that the communications department, the writers, the data people were all kind of, it was, you can't just go with the template that you've used in past years. So thank you for all of the work that went into this. I want to give a huge enthusiastic yes to the detailed data that we were presented. I would love to see this in future annual reports. I think it provides a picture to the community that's honest about where we've been and where we're headed, and helps people celebrate our successes, and also puts the concerns right out there on the table for everybody to appreciate and hopefully wrap their arms around and help our students and schools do better. I did want to ask a couple of maybe statistical data related questions. In some of the slides that you showed of the more detailed data, I wondered if there were confounding factors that need to be called out that were influencing the numbers. For instance, in the data around advanced learning, it was reading scores, and we have kids who are identified at advanced learning in a lot of different areas and not just reading. So it's possible some of those gaps were because kids were identified in math or in leadership or in science, and actually reading is not their strong thing. Also, we changed how we identify advanced learners over the last 5 years, and that could be changing the data as well. I'm uncertain about English language learners. Are they still considered English language learners once they hit proficiency in reading? And if they're not, that could be making our results look different. So I'm not sure if that's a consideration we need to think about when we're looking at that data. And also, we see a lot of like 1%, 2%, 3% changes in much of the data we've been presented. And I know we have issues around sample size, but it would be really helpful as a board member to know when those changes are reason for concern or celebration, and when those small changes are just possibly due to random chance because they asked different questions on the test that year. The test was a little harder that year or a little bit easier. So I really love what was said about using data to change the narrative. Thank you, Ananda, and also move the needle. And I think understanding both just the statistical significance of some of what we're looking at, as well as possible confounders, is part of that narrative. I'll stop there with my first point if there's any response to that one.
Sure. Thank you, Chris. I can offer a couple of perspectives. I think, first of all, the confounding factors regarding AL in particular, yes, we do have students that are identified for advanced learners status and receive those services that are not advanced readers per se. But you are right in that we have a whole host of advanced learner classifications, and not all of them are math or reading related. I would also say that for us, we do count ELL through what's referred to as DPI level 6. So students that have attained English proficiency are still extended services to monitor and to ensure that they've maintained that proficiency through the years. So we consistently include ELLs, to include DPI level 6 with our ELLs. You'll often see it as ELP if it's only 1 through 5, so a limited proficiency would stop short of 6. And then the last question around ends and reasons or cause for concern or celebration. That is something that we do want to get more into in terms of making sure that the board is getting what they need. So providing ends as well as percentages, and really digging in more and more into the whys as to why we're seeing what we're seeing, and provide a full picture for that. So thanks for calling that out. Thank you.
Thanks. My next thing was actually goes back to the very beginning of the presentation when we brought up the idea of needing a new baseline because things have really changed. And that's absolutely true. The metrics that we were using for our old baselines, the MAP test, we can't do right now. So giving that some thought and looking at the report, some of the new baselines or potential new baseline data that was presented was things like family, staff, and student surveys. And a question I have around that is how often will we continue to get this feedback on how virtual learning is working? Because if this is a new baseline, it's actually a baseline that we need to measure our progress against, I think much more frequently than once a year, because we're in such new territory. So I'm kind of curious how often we're going to go back and talk to families and students and staff about how the first quarter went and what we need to change in terms of our approach to continue to make things better. I really like how the annual report lays out. We heard you, we made changes, and I'm just hopeful that we're not going to wait till the next annual report to do that again. And if you want to say more about how we're going to basically use an iterative process to continue to improve virtual learning, that would be great.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, thanks for the question. The wealth of information we got from the virtual learning survey, it was a big driver. It was a big effort. It took some time to consume. It took some time to participate in. We know that with this environment, we want to learn quickly what folks' experiences are, and that includes students and families and our teaching staff, and make adjustments as quickly as we can. So we're toying with a couple of different cycles, and we're looking to pull together a bit of a work plan we'd like to share with the board. So we're not just waiting for one big, virtual learning survey like the old climate survey was once a year, but what are the something more close to a pulse check? What can we look at that's quarterly? What can we look at a couple of times? It's even lighter than that. An additional time every quarter. So we would like to, for example, capture reflections on folks' experience for the first very month of school. So we're looking to pull together that draft and would like to share with the board.
Thanks. And then on the same thread of that idea of having a new baseline, a lot of the metrics that were presented in the annual report are implementation metrics. such as, giving up meals, how much technology we manage to get into students' hands, grading, office hours, attendance, things like that, which show that we're doing our jobs, but don't necessarily show that we're moving the needle in terms of student achievement. So I'm curious how we're going to set a new baseline for impact, both academic and social emotional impact, given that the measurements that we've used don't really, we can't measure them, particularly the MAP test.
Yeah, I would say first that we would be looking at the assessments that are continued. So we would still have ACT. Again, looking forward, hard to know what sort of circumstances environment will be for administering our assessments, what would be available online versus in person, ensuring that it's safe enough to do that in person, be part of the conversation we have moving forward. As we look to other assessments, we do have to look to see what is available from our own evidence. So if we're going to be looking, for example, at a screener and seeing how students are performing on one administration of the screener compared to what they should be in the future. So that is one way where we can get a baseline established much sooner than the end of the school year with one major assessment, something like ACT, for example. So there are opportunities for us to look at other assessments that have more frequent cycles and then give us more information about our own students, as well as looking to vendors to see what sort of information they could share with us as to baseline certificates.
Thanks. Finally, just in terms of the detailed data, are there things that would be really nice to see in there? It would actually be lovely to see how a cohort performs over 5 years. So take a group of kids in 4th grade and show us their data in 4th grade, 5th grade, 6th grade, 7th grade, and 8th grade, where presumably, well, this year's going to mess it up because we don't have the MAP test, but it'd be really nice to see what happens from elementary school through middle school with a cohort of children, just to see where we might have weak links throughout our educational program starting in 3rd grade. It also would be really helpful. I very much appreciate getting the staff retention data in this annual report. It would be really helpful to get a specific teacher retention number because a lot of the national data focuses on teacher retention, and getting a number that we can compare to other districts and other states would be really nice. And that's it. Thank you for taking on my questions.
Thank you for those questions.
Great, thank you, Savion, then Chris Gomes-Schmidt.
Yeah, thank you so much for this detailed presentation and the presentation of the data. I just wanted to highlight how concerning the MAP scores for our Black students with special needs are, and those reading scores. And I'm just curious in future, presentations of data, is that intersection with also the discipline data as well for those students, and those comments.
Great, thank you, Savion. Chris Gomes-Schmidt.
Yeah, thank you. And thank you for the report. I'm looking forward to taking a closer look at it in a little more detail when I get some more time, but hoping to ask some questions sort of along the same line that Chris was asking about the assessments that we're able to use now. So I really appreciate the look at the data and taking a look at the different nesting that you were doing with those and how you can look at that in different ways. And I'm just curious, the examples were based on MAP. What are we going to be able to use this year? Since we had talked before that MAP won't be able to be used unless we're going back in person. So as we're trying to figure out how to assess students and do that on, is that even possible this year? What, I guess specifically, what assessments are we using at which grade levels and what's going to be possible? Just even looking at ACT tests have been pushed back. All the standardized tests that are given are pushed back. And there's some sort of uncertainty over the timeline of that. So I guess what can we expect?
Let me start, Chris. So actually, we just sent out to schools over the last couple of days information about our initial screener and our initial early literacy assessment, which is FastBridge. And this is the first year that we're rolling that out. We did a comprehensive plan to get that rolled out this year. Actually, our instructional staff needs to be trained. At some of our schools, we have 100% of the staff trained, but they have until the end of October to get trained and to administer those probes in just a handful of areas, because remember, these have to be given virtually. So we wanted to be sure there is a credibility and a validity to these assessments in a virtual environment. So we actually hand-picked a few of those probes from FAST that will give us the most information about how students are doing. We also have the immediate real-time data in Lexia at elementary. That, if we remember, since we first purchased that was the only set of formative data that we had, because we had nothing else to give us kinder, first and second grade data around phonics and word recognition and other early literacy skills. And we have data that actually proves that schools and children that meet their minutes, actually that better correlates to success on the MAP test. So we have those pieces that we're looking at. And remember, the FAST does replace the PALS. It's also the same one that is our 4K screener. We wanted to minimize assessments and use the ones that give us the most information. We also added in the comprehensive assessment system for the first time assessments that actually measure Spanish language proficiency. That was a very big gap for us. We did not have that. And again, we have some measurements in there that we're using through Achieve that we can help to measure the Spanish proficiency of students who are native Spanish speakers or who are in bilingual programs. So by nature of a comprehensive assessment system, right, it comprehensive gives this sort of sound of just sort of weight and density. And it's a process. It'll be about a 4-year process to roll all of it out. And we do have this on a board presentation to talk with you about all of that and answer your questions in more detail.
Okay. I appreciate that. I hate to lose when you switch assessments, the longevity aspect of what we've been doing with MAP. It's really hard to think about losing that entirely. So if we end up going back to that after this year at some point, yeah, I think that's a great discussion for us to have. My other point was around the advanced learning, and Dr. Jenkins, I just want to say I appreciate the comments that you have made around advanced learning and the need to change the narrative about the expectations around achievement. And I think continuing to look at that advanced learning data, like Chris pointed out, to look at the reading scores, our advanced learners are identified in 5 different domains. And so if we can somehow break down that data, so we're looking at advanced learners who are actually advanced in reading, and then pair that, I mean, it's key to it's not just about giving kids a label, it's about actually pairing it with programming and actual things that they're doing to help them develop the skills in the areas where they're identified. And so I think, teasing that information out, whether it's reading, whether it's math, if we're going to measure it in arts or leadership, and how we're going to do that, I think is important. And also looking at the intersection between advanced learners and ELL students and special education students. I don't think we've done that before at a very high level. And I think that's really important too, because there is intersection between those groups of students. And I think that's important to highlight also.
Chris, I think that's a powerful comment, and just stop short of one. The characteristics that's displayed in advanced learners are the same similar characteristics that are displayed in African-American students with IEPs. They're twice exceptional, but it's just a matter sometimes of who's doing the assessment and how that child gets labeled and given a certain opportunity. So I think to further disaggregate the data in that particular area would be powerful for all of us. And let me say this, I know we're talking about data. The most important influence on any of this are our wonderful teachers. And I wanted to say, the presentation, the team, great job, but the teachers make it happen at the classroom level. And also their initial assessments. The formatives are very important, and all this work that we're doing, no matter what summatives we have out there, we do have a gauge, we have sharp teachers, but we have to give them the professional development and the support on the front end in order that all this can happen too on the back end though. So I just wanted to make sure we got that out there. The data is very important. The data doesn't happen without people.
Thank you. I appreciate that a lot. And I think especially this year going forward, it's going to be so important to support our staff, support our students, and really look for those stories. We just aren't going to have as much data as we normally would. And so looking for those ways to show the success and show the challenges that our students are facing as we go through this year. So I really look forward to working with you on that.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. I think we're all good. Thank you, Dr. Jenkins and staff for presenting that. It was a wonderful presentation. I'm trying to get to my agenda. Okay, next is the report on items that proceeded through the instruction work group held September 8th, 2020.
Thank you so much, President. Thank you so much, President Gloria. We had a pretty extensive conversation on the virtual learning. So we had agreed that at every instruction work group, we will be reviewing what's been happening in the virtual learning. At our last meeting, we had a very extensive conversation and we were able to look at some of the reports that preceded what we have learned today and had a further discussion regarding what are some of the things that we're going to be implementing in the fall based on some of our learnings in the spring and in the summer. We had also a conversation around, we had an overview of the available waivers from DPI. And in another item, we had a memo, we have a memo in this agenda that will talk a little bit more and explain a little bit more about what those waivers are and what they mean for us. At our next meeting, we will be focusing, it's going to be Monday, October 5th. We'll be focusing, we'll continue to review virtual learning updates, but we'll be focusing on full day 4K and the application relevant to our work. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ananda. Next, we'll go to report on items that proceeded through the instruction work group held September 8th, 2020. Chris Cruzy.
Thanks, Gloria. So at our last operations work group meeting, we spent most of our time talking about the 2020-21 budget, which is actually two budgets, one with and one without a passing operating referendum. We will be voting on two final budgets and two final tax levies on October 26th at our regular meeting, and there will be a public hearing before the vote. We also talked about purchasing the land and buildings at the Badger Rock Middle School site, contingent on passing an operating referendum. We are voting on that tonight. And we also got an update on operations during virtual learning. Our next meeting is scheduled for Monday, October 12th. We will be continuing our conversation about the 2020-21 budget and tax levy. And we will get another update on virtual learning operations with an eye towards the second quarter.
Great, thank you, Chris. Next, we'll move on to action items that proceeded through the instruction work group held on September 8, 2020. First is the DPI waiver. I move that the Board of Education authorize the district to request a DPI waiver from the instructional minutes requirement as set forth in Wisconsin State Statute 121.02, Parents 1, Parents F, for the 2020-21 school year.
So moved.
Can I get a second?
Nikki.
Nikki, second. Okay, discussion?
Yes.
Okay, discussion. So Nikki, second. We're gonna do a discussion now. Nikki and then Chris Crucy.
My discussion is actually on the letter that we received. The IEP team actually isn't bound on instructional minutes in that way. They still have to follow that, but the IEP can request classes on Wednesday. They can request things if it is already in the IEP. Waiving the minute requirement is not going to change the IEP requirement. What's in the IEP or what's been negotiated in the IEP has already been set and agreed on by the IEP team. It's not a minute requirement as stated. That waiving it would matter. It actually goes to the individual document. Can't just waive it group wise. Lisa, am I explaining that correctly?
Thank you, Nikki, for that.
You're singing my tune over here. Yes, I was going to say that those decisions are made via the IEP team where parents are fully present for those discussions and want to be sure that our team here reaches out to that family to make sure that they're getting what they need for their individual child as well.
That was my only comment.
Great, thank you, Nikki. Chris?
My comment is a technicality. So the form that we're sending into DPI has an additional form that you have to fill out to waive instructional minute requirements. And one of the boxes you have to check on this form says that the school district held a public hearing and the community was mostly in support of the waiver or the community offered no input. We got one comment and it was opposed to the waiver. How do we handle that?
Am I on the screen? I can't tell.
You are, Sherry, we can see you.
Okay, so normally the way I handle that is I actually submit the number of comments and what the comments were. So what I would do is submit that there was one comment and that comment was that the particular parent wasn't in favor of the waiver, but I would also continue to point out the information that Nikki provided so that the DPI is fully aware of what happened. And then I also send them exactly where in the meeting the comment was read so that they can review it if they choose to.
Sorry, I had a crisis to deal with here at home. Any other comments, questions? All right.
Oh, Ananda had her hand up.
Sorry, Ananda, go ahead.
Go ahead, Christina.
My question is around the larger work that we're doing and needing to provide waivers for instruction, attendance, civics exam. Last spring, it was necessary to make changes around the grading policy for students. And I guess my question is, do we need some kind of pandemic organizational document that keeps track of the changes that we're making and the reasons why and sort of the follow-up on these? I feel like these things are necessary to discuss and necessary to decide on, but might be easy to lose track of these decisions that we're making and the effect that they're having on schools and students, and a way to come back and take a look at that. So is that something that we think would be possible, useful? You know, I'm thinking if you want an example in relation to the grading policy that we changed last year, we changed the credit requirement. So how many more students graduated because we changed that policy? You know, when we change the instructional minutes, what does that mean for the way, you know, or how is it going to be communicated to our schools what the expectations are around instructional minutes, that sort of thing. Any thoughts on that?
I think we will want to be able to continue to uplift the voices of students and families, as we talked about a little bit earlier with Andrew, and the ways and the questions that we're asking to get after the information that we need to be sure that things are actually making a difference. So I agree with you. I think that we need to be keeping track of this and finding out if they're actually working and what's the evidence that things are working or not. So that's very much in our ways of working moving forward, Chris.
Is there a place that would, or live, or how that would look, or another time we can talk about that, or how?
I think we could certainly talk about it at our ongoing virtual learning updates that we have through the instructional work group, or through written updates in the board update as well. I think there are a variety of ways that we can do that.
Nanda?
Okay. Thank you. I just wanted to share, like, I feel it's a space of a lot of conflict for me, all the waivers, right? I think sometimes people can misread the waivers as that we're waiving the right of a student to be educated. And that's what we're trying to say. And that is not the intent of those waivers. I know when I'm having conversations with my colleague at the state, when we're talking about waivers, we're talking about tools for districts, in particular for staff, right, to navigate in particular this situation that we are currently facing right now. And what does that mean? We also know that, you know, COVID is disproportionately impacting brown, black children, children with disabilities, children with IEPs, right, English learners, and children that need these very specific programs that, you know, that are they are there to support students and to make sure that they are receiving the education that we are committed to be giving. So I wanted to give voice to that, because I appreciate your comment, Chris. I appreciate your comment, Nikki. I really appreciate the person that submit their comment. I hope that we can continue to send a message that, you know, we're not wavering the children's right to be educated. That is the fundamentally right, and that's our job to make sure that our children are educated. It is challenging when we have children. It is challenging when we can't be in person with children. It is challenging when we're asking children to be learning through a screen. It is challenging when we ask children to, you know, to pay attention to a device for a prolonged period of time. I think we are facing really extraordinary situations. My hope is that as we're building those waivers, that we're also continue to expand our thinking around how we're going to address this continuum delay and minimum type of education that we're giving, particularly to certain group of students.
Okay, anybody else? All right, let's go for a vote. Julia, your advisory vote?
Aye.
Aye, all those in favor? Aye with the hands. Okay, any opposed? Okay, motion passes 7-0. Next is it's the waiver again for school attendance. I move that the Board of Education authorize the district to request a DPI waiver from the school attendance enforcement requirements as set forth in Wisconsin State Section 118.16 and 118.162 for the 2020-21 school year. Can I get a second?
Second, Nikki.
Nikki, second. Any discussion? Julia, your advisory vote? Oh, Nikki, did you have something?
This is on the attendance, correct? Or
Yes. Yep.
Just wanted to bring up a point. I've had several people state that kids were being marked absent for having their cameras off, even though our policy says the camera doesn't have to be on. Is there any way to rectify that situation?
I'm sure staff will, I don't know, Lisa, do you have any response to that?
Yeah, that is not part of our attendance policy, Nikki. So if that is going on, we will certainly work to rectify that.
Because
you.
I've had two students who both had anxiety, whose parents were stating they're getting marked absent because they're afraid to turn the camera on.
You're muted.
Thank you, Savion. We'll definitely look into that, Nikki. I can certainly understand how that would happen from a child's perspective, and we don't want that child to be marked absent.
Yeah, they should contact their building principal.
Yeah,
That helps.
yeah, thank you, Nikki, for bringing that up. I have heard that, and that has also impacted some of our students that are experiencing different things at home, or yeah, I think it's a privacy issue as well. And what my recommendation has been, and that has been addressed, Lisa, is that the parent has reached out to the teacher and said, like, no, we're not doing that. And that has been addressed.
Thank you, Ananda. All right, Julia, your advisory vote? Aye. Okay, all those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Show of hands, okay. Motion passes 7-0. Next is a request for DPI waiver for civics exam. I move that the Board of Education authorize the district to request a DPI waiver for the civics exam as set forth in Wisconsin State Section 118.33, Parents 1M, Parents A1 for the 2020-21 school year. I get a second? Ali, second. Okay, any discussion? Okay, all those in favor, aye. Or I'm sorry, Julie, advisory vote? Aye. All those in favor, aye. Okay, any opposed? Okay, motion passes 7-0. Okay, action items that proceeded through the operations work group. It's the proposed building purchase. I move that the Board of Education accept the terms between MMSD and the Rooted for moving forward with the purchase of land and a building located at 501 East Badger Road, contingent on the passing of the November 3rd, 2020 MMSD referenda to build an elementary school on the south side of Madison near Rimrock Road, attached to the current building occupied by the Badger Rock Neighborhood Center and Badger Rock Middle School at a purchase price of $6.4 million, set forth in the letter of understanding, the property lease outline and the purchase outline, and their related exhibits A, B, and C, respectively, attached to this agenda, items dated September 21st, 2020.
So moved, Ananda.
Ananda, second. Any discussion? Okay, Julia, your advisory vote?
Aye.
Aye. All those in favor? Aye. Show of hands.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, motion passes. This is exciting. Okay. Okay, now we'll move on to the consent agenda items. I move that the Board of Education adopt and approve all of the motions set forth in section 10 of the electronic agenda prepared for the September 21st, 2020 regular school board meeting, exactly as said motions are written. By voting affirmatively on this motion, a board member expresses his or her affirmative vote on each of the motions consolidated hereby, subject to any express separations that have been made by any member of the school board. Can I get a second?
Second.
Second, Ananda. Okay, Nikki,
Separate 10.11.
10.11. Chris,
I need to separate 10.15.
10.15. Ananda,
Separate 10.4, 10.7, and 10.12, please.
okay, any others? All right, we will go ahead and separate 10.11, 10.15, 10.4, 10.7, and 10.12. We will approve all other consent agenda items. Julia, your advisory vote?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, all those in favor? Aye. Show of hands. Any opposed? Okay, motion passes 7-0. We will start with 10.11.
The reason I pulled this is until Mr. Gaines spoke, until I think his name was Mr. Gaines, I may have gotten the name wrong, spoke today, I was in full assumption that the MOA, although some people weren't perfect with it, was fully agreed upon. And I'm starting to see that it wasn't. Additionally, I'm not comfortable that the board never had an open discussion on the topic, that it was put in a consent agreement, and I really think it needs to be put in a work group for a formal discussion. We're cutting 42% of a budget of a partnership that's been 50 years in the making, that works with our Black, Brown, and students, who provides jobs for those who are poor or can't find work and need other educational opportunities. I just feel that they didn't have enough discussion, and that's why it needs to be pulled for the agenda and put into a work group.
Okay, thank you, Nikki. Ali?
Nikki, I want to thank you very much for those concerns. I also want to thank the board at Operation Fresh Start and their executive director for speaking to their ability to fundraise, to compensate for that loss in funding to a pretty significant degree in order to maintain services to young people. I think that they are a true partner, and I think that in the long term, it's been very clear that the ultimate goal is to continue to work together at the fullest extent. And so I think part of working together is realizing the confines of our budget, which is not something any of us are excited about. However, I do think they have both been made aware of it and been able to recover because of the strength and integrity of their leadership and their programming from that very, very significant cut to funding. So although I deeply appreciate your sentiment, Nikki, I do think the right thing is to move forward with the decisions as they've been communicated thus far.
May I put it
Christina?
out?
Just a second, Nikki. Christina?
Wondering if this comes back to us during the school year at some cycle to look at this partnership and or how it will get decided, because this really is just a one-year funding gap that they are providing. And so I'm wondering how the decision gets made and when this comes back to us to discuss as a partnership.
It does.
You have staff here that can, yeah.
You're on mute, I think.
Bree, do you know where we're at in the cycle for this partnership, or Cindy?
Yeah. Hi, everyone. I can answer that. So we are in the second year of a 2-year MOA, and it's a medium intensity MOA as it has been scored. So we would come back next year anyways. One of the conversations that we've had ongoing with Operation Fresh Start is that we will use our quarterly monitoring meetings that we already have in place to continue to discuss the progress to date, where things are, both from a performance standpoint as well as from a budgetary standpoint, and then use our already existing process to move forward. So their MOA ends and we would come back next year based on where we are as a partnership in general, as we do with all of our other MOA and contracted partnerships.
Thanks, Cindy.
Any other, Chris? Christy, did you have something?
Yeah, I want to echo what Ollie said. I think it's amazing that Operation Fresh Start just stepped up to the plate and has put their own fundraising in place to get them through this year when MMSD is going through a very, very uncertain budget year. I fully support the board coming back and revisiting this decision in the coming year's budget. I know Operation Fresh Start requested an amendment, but I think it would actually probably be ill-advised to amend a one-year expenditure to promise money in a future year. If this was a multi-year expenditure plan, that would be one thing, but because it's only a one-year plan, I think the best move is for us to commit to coming back and revisiting this, and especially if the operating referendum passes, see what we can do in future budgets to continue to support this really important program that's serving kids in very good ways.
Yep. Thank you, Chris. Nikki?
What month would this come back, one? And number two, I know it's ill-advised, but I'm going to make the motion anyways. But first, could I have the question answered?
Oh, what was your question, Nikki?
What month is
When
this
does it come
coming
back? Okay. Anybody know that?
So it would follow yeah, I could answer that. It would follow our regular cycle that we close out MOAs in June, and then we would start up a new draft of an MOA process in July, and we'd go through the approval process in July. And so it would come back to the board probably July or August for the MOA and for the consent approval.
My second question, may I ask one more, Chair? I know I'm not trying to
And then
manipulate
before you make a
the time.
motion, I just want to say a few words. So go ahead, Nikki.
Absolutely. So correct me if I'm wrong, does the fiscal year end this coming year on July 1st, correct? So wouldn't it be too late to save them if we didn't hear it before then?
So I would just say that every year through our contracted programs, we go through a reflect and adjust cycle in terms of how those partnership processes are already designed. And we make decisions at that time for our contracted programs based on capacity that we have and our contracted programs have and the progress that they made. And so far to date, the timeline for that has worked out. So I don't know if Mike or anyone else wants to chime in on that, Nikki, but
Yeah.
that's the process that we have always used.
So I'd also just want to add one other thing on this is what we will look at, and I believe it was shared, but we'll make sure that gets to you, is that we look at the metrics that we used to see on how successful this partnership, as well as all other partnerships that we're working with, has been. And we look at the trend data on this as well. Obviously, we value this partnership. We know, as a former high school principal, I know many students that went through OFS. I also know that we continually will look at additional opportunities for students to try to earn their diploma.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mike. Kelly, did you want to add anything?
I just wanted to say Cindy's process going through July and August is within her own budget, looking at the metrics, as Mike said. If this board wants to move forward with a strategic equity project for alternative program spaces, at-risk youth, certainly that'd be part of our budget conversations, which would happen between January and March, this coming January and March.
Great, thank you, Kelly. And I think that, I'm in agreement. This is a really important program for us. I think that even more so now after our COVID pandemic, and I think it is really time for us to invest and target our resources to our most vulnerable students. And I think that we're going to have to really evaluate and use metrics on the success of our students with all of our programs that we fund. I think this is an opportunity for us, right? I think that we're going to have to build the capacity within our own district and with our partners as well right, to focus our efforts in this area now more than ever before. And that is exactly what we will need after now and into the future, the new normal, right? And so I think this is a critical partner for us, and we need to figure out a way to continue to work with them and support them. I do agree with Chris Carusi. I think that an amendment right now, it's not good timing. I think that we wait until we start negotiating and talk about this in June, or even in January and February, as Kelly suggested. So that is where I am at. Nikki, are you still wanting to do an amendment? Okay, go
Yes,
ahead.
I amend that we restore Operation Fresh Start budget after this year, starting in June of the coming year, June of 2021. At I believe cost would be $75,000.
So restoring the Operation Fresh Start funding for the 2021 school year. Can I get a second? For the sake of voting? Second.
Second, Ananda.
Okay, now the second. Any further discussion on this? Okay, all those in favor, aye.
Oh, hold on a second, Gloria, sorry. I do understand the sentiment that Nikki, OFS has done so much for our community, has contributed greatly to addressing a lot of inequities that we have in our city. I have to say that I feel extremely conservative on our budget right now. And so if this is our recommendation, I'll support the recommendation for the administration, but I really commend Nikki and really trying to address this and be responsive to our community partners.
Great, Chris?
So likewise, Nikki, I fully appreciate the sentiment behind this. I think committing ourselves to find a way to restore this funding is a good thing to do. However, I don't think putting an extra year on a one-year agreement is the way to do it. I think we need to commit to looking at this as a strategic equity investment in our coming budget well before June. So that is how I would approach this.
Yeah, I'm in agreement. Thank you, Chris. All right, all those in favor for the amendment, Nikki's amendment, raise your hand, aye. Okay, any discussion? Okay, no more discussion. And all those opposed, aye. Raise your hand. Okay.
We got you, Gloria.
Okay, motion fails. All right, thank you, Nikki. So next is 10. Wait a minute, we have to go to the original motion, sorry. The original motion, do you guys want me to read it again, or are you good?
Read it again, please.
Okay, I move that due to COVID-19 pandemic, the Board of Education extend the contract with Operation Fresh Start, providing for a mix of virtual and in-person programming for the 2020-21 school year. And the expenditure in the amount of $201,000. Funding from the 2020-21 Office of Youth Reengagement of $125,000 and Student Services $76,000 operating budget. Can I get a second?
A second.
And on the second, any further discussion? Julia, your advisory vote?
Aye.
Okay, all those in favor, aye. Any opposed? Okay, motion passes 7-0. Next, we'll move on to 10.15.
So I need to recuse myself from this vote because my employer has a partnership with American Family Insurance.
Okay. Thank you, Chris. Let me read this here. I move that the Board of Education accept a donation in the amount of $100,000 from the American Family with $50,000 supporting additional wireless access points and $50,000 supporting the renewal of Wi-Fi internet hotspot data subscriptions to provide access for MMSD students during the COVID-19 pandemic. Can I get a second?
Second, Ali
And a
Mulder.
second?
And then just a moment for discussion. I just want to extend a tremendous thank you for supporting our students and for standing by MMSD as a community. Thank you all so much.
Yes, thank you. Any other discussion? All right. Julia, your advisory vote?
Aye.
Okay, all those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, motion passes 6-0 with 1 abstention. 10.4. 10.4. Now that you're on mute.
I recuse myself because I'm on a board of Madison College.
Okay. Any other? All right. 10.4, I move that the Board of Education approve an extension due to the COVID-19 pandemic of the contract with Gateway to College, providing for a mix of virtual and in-person programming for the 2020-21 school year, and the expenditure of up to $203,000 using funding from 2020-21 Office of Youth Re-Engagement operating budget to create a contract for services with Madison College from September 1st, 2020 to June 30th, 2021 to deliver the Gateway to College program during the 2020-21 school year. Can I get a second?
Second.
Looks like Chris second. Any discussion? All right, Julia, your advisory vote?
Aye.
Okay, all those in favor, aye. Nikki, are you voting? I haven't seen
Yes,
anything.
and I missed it because I was trying to shut off my timer that was going off and the sound was driving me
It's
crazy.
okay. All right.
So
Motion
forgive me.
passes 6 with 1 abstention.
Forgive me on the timer issue.
6-0, 1 recusal. Thank you.
Recusal, I'm sorry. Yeah.
Thank you.
10.7.
Also recuse you for the same reasons.
Okay. I move that the Board of Education, due to the COVID-19 pandemic, extend the contract with Madison College, HSED, providing for a mix of virtual and in-person programming for the 2021-21 school year for the expenditure and the amount of $60,000 to be funded from the 2020-21 Office of Youth and Re-Engagement operating budget.
Second, Nikki Vandermeulen.
Nikki, second. Any discussion? Julia, your advisory vote?
Aye.
Okay. All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Okay, motion passes 6-1 with 1 recusal. 10.12.
No, I voted yes.
I recuse, Nikki.
Nikki, yeah, another recuse.
So 6-0-1. Okay.
6, yep.
6-0. 6-0-1 would be if a person abstained. If you're recused, you don't vote at all, so you're not counted in the total. Is that good?
That explains a lot better.
So we got
Thank
6.
The voice of God to clarify.
I know, right?
Hey, I'll take it.
Thanks, Barb.
Barb, you are the voice of God.
We'll take it. It's high holy day.
Praise be.
Praise be. Okay, 10.12.
I'm also recusing. My grant used to fund this program, the Natural Circles of Support.
Okay. All right. So I move that the Board of Education approve a change to the 2017-2018 board budget amendment, enabling the Natural Circles of Support and MMSD to have the ability to identify, vary, and expand the school locations in which the Circles of Support program operates as necessary. Can I get a second?
Second, Nikki.
Nikki, second. Any discussion? Okay, Julia, your advisory vote?
Aye.
Aye.
Ali was had her hand up.
I'm sorry, Ali.
No, I just wanted to say I really appreciated the information we got about this in the instruction work group around circles of support and the shift. So thank you for this work, and I am enthusiastic about circles of support and our ability to support them to a greater extent via this change.
Great, thank you. Julia, advisory vote was aye. Okay. All those in favor, aye. Okay, 6 with 1 recusal. Motion passes.
Thank you.
I'll get this straight.
You got it.
Next is
13.
Other reports to the board. City of Madison Education Committee.
President Reyes, we have not met this month as we are still non-essential committees.
Okay, great, thank you. A Student Senate? Julia?
Yeah, we just had our first meeting. Savian and Ali came to that, so thank you both to you guys. I think it was really good. We had a lot of new students join us, and we're also setting up kind of a form so that we can get more student input on what the board is actually doing on a week-to-week basis. So I think that'll be good. And yeah, thank you guys.
Thank you. All right, report out for Madison School MSCR Advisory Committee.
We did not meet. We are meeting next month.
All right, update on Safety and Security Ad Hoc Committee. Savian, do you want to cover that?
Yeah, so our last meeting, it was on September 10th, right? And let me double check that. Yep, it was September 10th. We had a really in-depth conversation on what it means for a school to be safe. Sorry for the background noise. Yeah, we had a really good conversation on what it means for a school to be safe. And we discussed 3 policies, 4224, 4147, 440. We had staff give a presentation on current policy and practice for those. And we have postponed our next meeting for, what is it, October 4th, because we want to have a more extensive conversation on what restorative justice means, both in practice and philosophy.
October 8th.
October 8th, thank you so much.
Okay, thank you, Savian, for that update. Update on Falk Renaming Committee. Will, from staff, anybody could do that for us?
I can.
Go ahead. Oh, thank you.
I could briefly update the board. We are still in the 30-day period, and we're accepting comments on proposals we have received recently in the last couple of days, additional proposals. So we will be waiting until the end of the 30-day period and then doing our research on them and then forwarding them to the Citizen Naming Committee for their consideration.
Great, thanks, Mike.
Sure.
All right, other business. High Intensity Partnership, MOA update, behavioral health in schools. Move that the Board of Education approve entering into the updated memorandum of agreement for the High Intensity Partnership Behavioral Health in Schools as set forth in the documents prepared for the September 21st, 2020 regular meeting. A second?
Second, Savian.
Savian, second. Any discussion? Chris?
So I really appreciate getting the red line version of the memo. And I have a question about implementation of this program during online virtual learning. I appreciate that this is going to be telehealth and that the providers are using a secure version of Zoom to meet with students. My question is, do we know and how are we supporting students in having a safe place to be online doing therapy, if they're doing it in their homes or if they're doing it in childcare?
I believe Armando is at the meeting here to address that specific question.
Hi, thank you for the question. So that's definitely those considerations are very high on our mind. As you mentioned, in terms of adaptation, they're using each mental health agency is using their own HIPAA compliant, privacy compliant platform. And from there on, we really are relying on both the clinician themselves and the partnership with each of the school specific coordinator for them to work with the family to establish those considerations. On the school side, we have provided guidance for teleservices and telehealth in terms of recommendations to follow and to check in, such as not having other people, not recording sessions, and essentially following those type of considerations. We also rely on the clinician as a partner and individualized services with the family to establish that. In terms of childcare settings, we are actively working on that guidance. We provided general guidance for the childcare settings when a student is present there, but that certainly is we're actively working with those programs, just giving the various programs around the city to make sure that they can provide services in an appropriate way.
Thank you so much for that.
Any other questions? Oh, Chris Gomes-Schmidt.
I had a question just in the agreement. It had said that the UW is going to be ending its evaluation in December of 2020, and the district is going to be taking over starting September in the day-to-day evaluation. What change does that mean for us and the information that we're going to be getting about the program, I guess?
So there won't be any changes. We're still are going to follow as a high intensity partnership, basically the annual monitoring reports. We're going to continue with our metrics as identified in the MOA. When it comes to the renewal of the partnership, we will still contract with an external evaluator to provide you a comprehensive report of the program throughout the years of the program. So only because the Wisconsin Partnership Program has ended, so that won't be built in, meaning that we've had we've been able to work with the UW School of Social Work, but we will continue providing those information and continue really to follow the infrastructure that we set so far.
Thanks.
Great. Anybody else? All right. Thank you, Armando. All right. Ready for a vote? Julia, your advisory vote. Oh, Sabian, did you have something? Okay. Julia, your advisory vote?
Aye.
Okay. All those in favor? Aye. Show of hands. Okay. Any opposed? Okay. Motion passes 7-0. All right, y'all, thank you for your patience tonight. We are, was the last item on our agenda. Can I get a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Okay, motion, second?
Second.
Okay, Chris Gomes-Schmidt, second. Julia, your advisory vote? Okay, all those in favor, aye. Any opposed? Okay, we are adjourned.
Good night.
Thank you all.
Good night.
Good night, everyone.
Night, everybody.